This chapter begins with a brief comparison of command and laissez-faire systems, right? And then transitions to a discussion of the characteristics of a market system. The 5 fundamental questions faced by every economy are presented, along with how the market economy answers each one of those questions. Right, we also talk a little bit about Adam Smith's invisible hand, and it leads into an explanation of why command systems have failed. Right, the circular flow model, which we'll talk about after that, discusses or provides an overview of how resources, goods move through the system. And then we discuss a little bit about risk. So, economic systems. It's ideally just a way that we solve problems with the economy, right? They differ in how decentralized or centralized they are in their decision making, i.e., how much the government has control, right? Command economies or planned economies, the government have a lot of control. Free market economies, the governments are hands off. If you taken business 100, you will learn about this as well. Right, some planned economies would include like North Korea, right? Just because they're so dictated. And then with free markets, no free market truly exists, right? Every place in the world has some set of laws, rules, regulations, right? Some countries get far closer to that free market system than others. One of the questions this week is to try and place the U.S. on this sliding scale, right? With the planned economies on one end and then the free market on the other. Between this line, where would the U.S. fall? And then it's asking you to look at some other countries and figure out where they might fall. Find a country that falls to the right of that and find countries that falls to the left of that. Now, the idea is laissez-faire capitalism, right? It's saying that let it be. The government doesn't get involved, right? The power of the government is just there to protect you as an individual, you as a property owner, you as a company, right? The people themselves interact to buy and sell. If you need something, somebody will provide it and they'll make it for you. If you think about a pencil, right? How many people are involved in making a pencil? And no one truly came in and told everybody to do all these different tasks to create this ultimate pencil. It just happened. Now, the command system, on the other hand, is known as socialism or communism. Right? Government ownership of all resources, or ownership of all resources, is in true socialism. And then somebody's deciding what's made, what's purchased, what's sold, what's used, who works where. Right? It controls those 4, right, resources. Some examples again are North Korea, Cuba, Myanmar. Now, the idea is that a market system is generally a mix, right? There is some decentralized decision-making happening with some government control. Almost all countries fall somewhere in this idea, right? Now, private marketers or private markets dominate this system, right? We can have private ownership of resources, of land, of entrepreneurial talent, of capital, and we have the concept of self-interested behavior. Now, some countries are actually less decentralized than others, right? If we talk about, say, the U.S., right? The government generally stays out of healthcare, whereas if you go to Canada, they have a socialized healthcare for all system, right? That's more government control in the healthcare system because it controls it, right? It dictates who does what, who makes what, those type of ideas. Now, the characteristics of the market system, right? Private individuals and firms own most of the private property or property resources of land and capital, right? Private property, coupled with the freedom to negotiate binding legal agreements or contracts, enables businesses and individuals to obtain, control, use, and dispose of their property. Private property rights encourage investment, innovation, exchange of assets, maintenance of property, economic growth. Right? Property rights also extend to intellectual property through patents, copyrights, and trademarks. Now, this concept of freedom of enterprise, right? It means that entrepreneurs and businesses have the freedom to obtain and use resources, right, to produce products of their choice and to sell these products in the market of their preference. right? Freedom of choice means that owners of property and money resources can use resources as they choose, right? Workers can choose to do the trading, occupations and jobs of their choice. Consumers are free to spend their income in such a way as to best satisfy their wants. And the idea is for the self-interest, right? It's to maximize profits, income, and satisfaction, right? It's the maximization of those concepts or those ideas. If we can maximize all of those things, the economy will benefit if competition is present, right? And competition requires two or more parties independently acting buyers and sellers, right? This serves to decentralize the economic power, right? You give it back to the individuals in the market itself. And then it also requires the freedom to enter or leave a market, right? And markets and prices are the characteristics, right, that reflect the decisions made on each side of the market equation, right? It determines a set of products and resources, prices that guide owners, entrepreneurs, and consumers as they all make their choices to reflect their own self-interest. Now, one of the key concepts of this market system, right, that we have to think of is we reward individuals and businesses for developing new technologies, right, thereby encouraging the development of and implementation, right, of those technologies. Specialization allows economies to take better advantage of their resources and their capabilities, right? If you think about a restaurant, people are specialized. They do certain tasks, and they learn to do those really well, right? Division of labor, human specialization, increases productivity by making use of differences in abilities, right? We foster learning by doing and saving time. There can also be geographic specialization, or it can be regional, it can even be international specialization. Now, when we talk about money, right? Money is just a medium of exchange, right? It's currently a fiat currency in which it just has no real value of itself, but people give it value, right? And we can use it to facilitate exchange, right? People used to just barter. I give you something, you give me something else. I recall back to where it was one red paperclip, right? A kid traded a one red paperclip to a house. He used to trade after trade after trade. It was a paperclip for a pen for something else. Eventually got to I think it was a boat or a four-wheeler, and eventually got him a house, right? So the idea is that money is socially defined, right? Whatever society accepts as a medium of exchange is money. It used to be beads, shells, stones, sheep, cows, whatever it was, right? It's just the medium of exchange. And it can facilitate trade, right? Because somebody doesn't have something you want, you can sell it to somebody something you have extra of, get money in exchange, and then go buy what it is you need. We do this every day in our lives, right? We have something that people want, something that our company wants. Generally, it's our skills, our talents. We sell our talents to the company in exchange for money. We then use that money to purchase those things that we want as individuals. Now, although the market system promotes efficiency, right, it has certain shortcomings, right? There can be an overproduction of goods that have social costs, right? Underproduction of goods that have social benefits. There are tendencies for businesses to increase monopoly power, right, in which they're the only person acting in that market, right? Governments also have shortcomings that lead to misallocation of resources. Now, the 5 fundamental questions that we talked about, right? These 5 questions highlight the economic choices underlying the production possibilities model, right? All economies, whether a market system or otherwise, must address these questions. So the first question, what will be produced, right? Profit is the difference between total revenues and total costs, right? It's whatever you sell it for, whatever it costs you to make it. That's what money you make. In market systems, consumers ultimately decide what will be produced through their dollar votes for a product, right? If there are not enough votes for a product, the firm will cease production of that product, and businesses must match their production choices with the consumer choices or else face losses and bankruptcy. The next question is how the goods will be produced, right? When firms face competition, the market forces the producers to use the most efficient production techniques. Otherwise, they'll be driven out of business. The combination of technology and the prices of the required resources determines the most efficient production technique. In this quick example here, right, the producer will rationally choose the least costly method because it is the method that leads to the greatest profit or to loss minimization, right? Profit maximization or loss minimization. And again, right, we get total revenue minus total cost is equal to economic profit or loss. Here, right, $15, which is the revenue they're going to be working, right? 3 techniques are producing $15 worth of bar of soap, right? The revenue is $15. Technique 1, it costs them $15, so their economic profit is 0. Here, it costs them $15 and their profit is 0. Here, it costs them $13, their profit is 2. What you're showing here is there's different techniques for producing land, using land, labor, land, capital, and entrepreneurship, right? First technique, lots of labor, right? Second technique, lots of land, some labor. Third technique, more land, more capital, less labor, less entrepreneurship. Because of the varying cost of these units of resources, right? Technique 2 actually comes out to be the cheapest, most efficient method. Another question is who will get the output, right? The market system is based upon the willingness to pay principle, which means that the consumer is willing and able to pay, right? The consumer gets the product. The ability to pay depends on income, which depends on the amount of resources the person has, and the price those resources obtain in the market. You have a very in-demand skill. People are willing to pay you more for that skill. Now, how will the system change? A market system is a dynamic environment, which means it's constantly changing, right? It's easily changed. It is able to quickly adapt to changes in consumer tastes and preferences. A business firm will find it in its best interest, right, to make the changes reflected in consumer choice. The market acts as a giant communication system, right? The consumers communicate their preferences through their dollar votes, right? This concept of dollar vote, right? The businesses then respond to this by producing more or less or none of the product. This will soon be reflected in the demands for the resources employed in the production of the product. Right? When technology and resources prices change, right, this affects the cost the producer faces when producing the good, changing the amount of good that the producer will be produced and the price of the good itself. Now, how will the system progress? The new market system promotes technological improvements, right, and capital accumulation, right? They want to build up capital, right? An entrepreneur or firm that introduces a popular new product will be rewarded, right? They'll be rewarded with increased revenue and profits. New technologies that reduce production costs, right, and thus product price, will spread rapidly through the industry as a result of competition. Creative destruction is a concept here, right? Creative destruction occurs when new products and production methods destroy the market positions of firms that are not able or willing to adjust. There's also a discussion thread on this concept as well. And now all this means that the market system leads to even greater capital accumulation, right, as it provides the resources necessary to produce more capital goods through the increased dollar votes for capital goods. Right, the entrepreneurs and business owners are able to purchase more capital goods as they become more and more profitable. One thing you have to realize, right, is this is an idealized system, right? Just because a firm increases their technology and can reduce their costs doesn't mean they're going to, or doesn't mean they're going to reduce it as much as the savings were from the technology. Most likely not, right? It's the individual best interest. And we'll get into this concept a little bit later on, right? But these are just generalized theories. Now, we get to this idea of the invisible hand, right? I mentioned it in my introduction video a little bit as well, right? But Adam Smith was considered to be the father of economics, right? And his interest was on the role of self-interest in motivating economic activity, and that's the key critical component there, right? Self-interested behavior. It's both the business and both by the businesses and by the suppliers of resources result in the greatest amount of economic efficiency, right? The market system guides resources into the production of goods and services most desired by society. It enforces the use of the most efficient production techniques while encouraging new production techniques to constantly reduce prices, reduce costs, right, to get that advantage. The market system encourages skill acquisition and hard work because you're rewarded, right, for your efforts. Entrepreneurs and workers alike are free to make choices based on their own self-interest. Now, we talked about the scale of economies, right, or economic systems. And there used to be far more command economies in the system, right? But the problem is they didn't work out. There were failures along the supply chain, right? In other words, getting from one place to another place to another place to another place, right? Moving the product along. They were common, right? Supply chain issues were common because one factory's output was another factory's input. A failure at any step along the way could cause a chain reaction. This became more difficult as the economies grew, as the systems grew larger, right? Think about the Soviet Union, how large and vast it is, about Eastern Europe, right? China. And there were no indicators of success, right? Like in the market system, right? Where they have profit or loss to indicate how successful a business firm is, right? There were no price signals to indicate more or less of a product was desired, resulting in surpluses and shortages. Now, the circular flow model, right? This is a circular flow diagram that you'll see here next, right? It's a very simple economic model, right? It's showing a private closed economy in which there's only a private sector consisting of households and businesses who interact with each other, right? The real flow consists of resources flowing from households, right? Households then being used producing products that flow from businesses, and the money facilitates the workings of the economic system. Households, right, are basically one or more people in a unit, right, housing unit. Right? And businesses combine resources and attempt to earn profits from the owners by offering goods and services for sale. Businesses are generally one of three basic types, right? The sole proprietorship, which is an individual, right? A partnership, which is managed by two or more persons, and a corporation, which is an independent legal entity. I mean, there are some others there, LLCs, LLPs, and such, but the main three are the proprietorship, the partnership, and the corporation. Now, here is the circular flow diagram, right? It's a simplified dynamic economy of continuous flows, right? Of goods and services, resources and money, right? It consists of households and businesses, and there is no government here, right? Households are the owners of the resources, selling their resources in the resource market, and income flows into the household. Households are the ones who buy the goods and services in the product market, and the prices that are paid in the product market are determined by supply and demand, right? Households sell resources and buy products, right? They're selling products to the product market, right? The businesses and the costs, resource market. And so from the resource market, they're bringing in land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. Right? Households provide land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, and they make money, right? But they also spend money on rent, wages, interest. So they spend money on rent and wages, make money and interest and profits. They also make money on rent and wages because businesses might rent some space or anything like that as well. Businesses buy the resources, right? They buy the resources, thereby providing income to the households, right? And they buy the resources to produce goods and services that are sold in the product market to households. When firms sell their products, right, the money that they receive is called revenue. Right? The counterclockwise flow of the economic resources and finished products, as illustrated by the red arrows, is paid for by the clockwise flow in money and income and consumption expenditures, illustrated by the blue arrows. All right? So again, the counterclockwise flow of economic resources, right, in red, right, is paid for by the blue arrows, right? The clockwise flow of money, income, and consumption expenditures illustrated. Okay? Now, how do these systems deal with risk? All businesses face risk, right? Sorry, the sun's just coming to my office right now, right? And profitability of a firm depends on how well they manage this risk. Profits flow to the owners as a reward for bearing the risk of losses, right? On the other hand, employees and suppliers to the firm do not face any risk, right? Because they get paid regardless of how well the firm is doing, ideally. Now, the market system will experience better economic outcomes, right, over time, since owners bear responsibility for their own management decisions. Right, compare this to the command and control economy, right, where no one bears any responsibility for bad management or losses or loses any money if they make bad decisions. Right, they receive the same salary regardless. This is also another reason that the command economies fell. Now, one thing that we're going to talk about, just on an ending note here, is the idea of shuffling the deck. Right? How many arrangements can be attained with 52 items, like a deck of cards, right? And then how many different arrangements can be made with a vast number of resources available to make goods and services? Right? The number of possible ways to arrange a deck of cards is so large that it's incomprehensible, right? Imagine the number of ways to allocate resources. The reason we do not have random outcomes is because of private property and people's abilities to make decisions about their own property, well, they'll make themselves better off, right? Not worse off. Right, so we avoid those random outcomes. All right, so this is the chapter this week. Be sure to review chapter 1 and 2 before taking the test this week, and also complete the practice problems. Again, if you have any questions or concerns or comments, please feel free to email me or post to the discussion board.